What's happening, everybody? Jay Shock Blast here, and finally, we're ready to do the X-Men Days of Future Past review. Saw it while I was in Jacksonville about a week and a half ago. I can't believe it's actually been that long since I got home. Actually, a week ago yesterday I got home. So, yeah, about 9 days ago I saw it. I think June 1st, maybe. Anyway. I've been trying to work out a time that, I can do this review with Eric, my brother, but in the end, I just want to get the video done. Normally, I do these reviews live as I'm playing the game. As you can see, I'm playing Marvel Heroes here, probably as Wolverine, and I may end up switching to another character at some point, just another X-Men character. We'll see. This time, I actually decided, because I want the video to sound good, I'm actually going to record it and then just do enough gameplay to match up with how long the review is. So if it ends at an awkward point, I apologize. In any event, man, what a movie. So I don't want to make it sound like it's my favorite movie of all time, like comic book movie, but it was definitely a great movie. I would say right out of the gate, I would give it a 7 out of 10. Not a horrible, I know a lot of people look at 7 out of 10 and think, oh, that's not really that great. But actually that's way above average. I would say it's a very good, well-made movie, and the parts of it that prevent it from getting a full score is it's more dramatic than it is action-packed, and trust me, there is a lot of action, but there's a lot of storytelling, and obviously that's natural in just about any movie, but this is the 5th X-Men movie at this point, so I get what they had to do, especially to tell this story, but I don't know, I guess I was just expecting a little bit more action. I think Eric would probably rate it lower than I do. I think I enjoyed it more than he did. I think he found it a little bit more boring than he was expecting. I don't want to speak for him. I wish he could speak for himself here, but it is what it is. I really feel like, though, Bryan Singer did a great job with it, and in a lot of ways, he rights a lot of wrongs that a lot of people felt after X-Men 3. I thought it was great. It's a really good movie. I enjoyed it, and I think the best part about it is it brings everybody together, and I think with X-Men First Class, I wasn't expecting to like that as much as I did, and this kind of before I go any further, absolutely going to be spoilers. I'm probably going to talk about the entire movie, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, definitely wait to watch this video. I don't know how to really do a movie review without talking about everything that happens in the movie, because that's what I want to do. So anyway, with X-Men First Class, one thing I want to talk about is the fact that I just wasn't sure how I felt about, going back in time and doing the origin story. I guess it's not that bad, but not really what I wanted at the time. And I think a lot of times we are guilty of judging something before we kind of get to it. And I definitely did that. And I'm glad that they really worked it all together the way that they did with the old and the new, because James McAvoy as Charles Xavier and Michael Fassbender as Magneto, Eric Lensher, two actors that I knew. I didn't know anything about James McAvoy, to be completely honest with you. Michael Fassbender, I'm a huge fan of Inglourious Basterds, so I definitely knew who he was. But these are two actors that I really, grew to love because of these two X-Men movies. I thought they were both fantastic. You really just they did such a fantastic job. I really enjoy them. They're two actors that I would definitely go see movies because they're in them. So that was awesome, to kind of see. I really like what they did tying together, the two X-Men franchises. Obviously, Patrick Stewart as Professor X is iconic. He legitimately is Professor X, I know we think of him as, being from Star Trek and stuff like that, but I mean, realistically, he is every bit Professor X as he is anything else, you know? Um, it's just, I really just adore the work that he did there. And of course, I'm sitting here trying to think of, I probably should know this, who he was, Jean-Luc Picard. I can't believe I couldn't think of that in Star Trek. You know, I think those are the two iconic roles that we will always remember him as. You know, maybe he had other things before that, but I really feel like those are two, you know, roles that he personifies. You know, Ian McKellen, another fantastic actor. He did a great job as Magneto. But I mean, Michael Fassbender as a young Magneto, it's just so cool to see them that way, which is something we've never seen. So I'm not really a huge fan of kind of like the going back in time thing. So I was a little worried about how they were going to do this. And I never really read Days of Future Past with X-Men. I've never really been a big X-Men guy, like a mutant guy, when it comes to comic books. So, you know, I definitely watched the X-Men cartoon when I was younger. I mean, who didn't? I mean, that was just one of the classic cartoons of our time. And but I mean, I don't know. I never read that story, so I don't know how close it is with that story. So as such, I don't judge it that way. And I think a lot of people, unless you're, you know, a diehard X-Men fan, diehard comic book fan, you know, a lot of people are kind of going to be in that boat with me. So, you know, when all is said and done, you know, this is a very new story to a lot of people, you know, myself included. So the movie basically starts in 2023. We see a ton of, you know, characters that we've seen before. You know, obviously Halle Berry is Storm. Actually, I don't know if we see her quite that early, but we definitely see Shawn Ashmore as Iceman. You know, we see Ellen Page as Kitty Pryde. Colossus is Daniel Cudmore. We start seeing Bishop and Blink and Sunspot and Warpath. Boo Boo Stewart is Warpath, and that was one that I was worried about for a while. But I mean, that kind of goes back to saying, you know, you really can't judge a movie until you see it. You kind of have to just put faith. And you know, I thought as Warpath, he actually worked really well, so that's kind of cool. I mean, I think I should have not questioned those things, because I think back to Thor. When they announced Chris Hemsworth as Thor, I was like, really? I don't see it. And, you know, I was actually somebody that wanted Triple H, the wrestler, to be Thor. I just thought, like, hey, that's Thor to me, you know, an older guy. But, I mean, I was so wrong about Chris Hemsworth. He was the perfect Thor. You know, to me, he is almost Thor at this point, you know? Like, so I think those are two classic cases where you just don't judge a book by its cover. You know, Omar Sy as Bishop was great. You know, Adam Canto as Sunspot. Don't really know much about that actor. But, you know, I didn't even know Sunspot was going to be in this. I mean, I guess I should have. But, you know, that was really cool to see him in the movie. I literally looked at my brother in the middle of the movie. I'm like, is that Sunspot? He's like, yeah, man, that's Sunspot. And there's Blink. So, you know, the opening of the movie is pretty intense. It's a huge fight scene. Probably one of the bigger fight scenes of the movie. And what's really weird about it is everybody's dying. And you're like, yo, what the fuck? They are killing everybody right from the get-go. Like, what is going on here? And, you know, we kind of go to a scene where, you know, Kitty Pryde is in a room with Bishop, and she is basically, you know, doing some mind control thing. And right as we are about to see, you know, right as we're about to see, you know, the Sentinels take the killing shot on them, Kitty Pryde is like, "Too late, assholes," which was dope. I mean, Ellen Page saying "too late, assholes," that was pretty cool. And they just disappear. You know, it's weird to see the world that way in 2023. The Sentinels have really taken over, and as it turns out, you know, we find out that, you know, Mystique, obviously played by Jennifer Lawrence again, you know, murdered Bolivar Trask back in 1973, and she was captured, and they used her DNA over time to create these evolving Sentinels. So, you know, we see, you know, Iceman, Sunspot, you know, Colossus, three characters where, you know, ice and fire and then, you know, metal. those type of abilities, we see them struggling with these Sentinels that are adapting to their strengths and hitting them with countermeasures. Like Iceman, they hit him with fire, and Sunspot, they hit him with ice and water, and Colossus, they basically melt him and break him. It's insane because they're evolving entities, and they just can't win. They can take some of them down, but like they just keep coming and they keep coming after them. So essentially what happens is Kitty Pryde is projecting herself into the past, basically saying, hey, we're not going to win and you guys need to bail. So essentially it's like they were never there by the time the Sentinels got there. And it's wearing thin. I think they end up in China, and they end up with Professor X and Magneto and Storm and a bunch of other X-Men are kind of waiting for him there. I think that's where Storm kind of comes into play. So I mean, it's essentially a battle, one to the next, to the next, to the next, and they're constantly living on the run, and they are just running out of time. So the idea comes up to basically find a way to use Kitty Pryde's power and try to go back, further than a few days, and they end up going back 50 years to 1973. So this is where the time travel thing comes into play. Like, I was kind of worried that they were going to literally go back in time, and you're going to see old, Professor X talking to young Professor X and stuff like that. And I'm glad that it worked out the way that it did. It didn't work out that way. Nobody actually physically goes back in time. What they end up doing is they project Wolverine's, consciousness to his 1973 self, and because he can, self-heal and his mind can handle it, they're not worried about him dying in the process and, being ripped to shreds and all that stuff and not being able to handle it. So we rewind actually to 1973. Wolverine wakes up in New York City, and he immediately goes to try to find, Charles Xavier. And he finds him a broken shell of himself. I mean, obviously, at that point it had been 10 years since, he had been paralyzed by that, basic bullet to the spine. A lot of things have happened since then. He lost track of Mystique. Magneto had been implemented in the plot to kill JFK, and he was literally, a mile below the Pentagon at like just the highest, maximum security facility, everything, to counterbalance his magnetism. So, Logan walks up to the X-Men's mansion, or whatever they call it, Xavier's Institute, Higher Learning, whatever. And, he's talking to Beast. He's like, you don't know this, but someday we're going to be really good friends. And he knocks him out. And he's shocked to see, Professor X walk down the stairs to him, because, the Professor X he was expecting, was to be crippled. Because obviously, Professor X, he had a chance to say, hey, I am a different person than the man you knew at this point in my life, struggling to find myself. And, essentially, he is right. Xavier, Charles Xavier is dipped into drugs. Beast, Hank McCoy, has created this drug that basically allows him to, have full functionality of his body again, but at the expense of his, ability to, read minds and, stuff like that. And so that's why, essentially Wolverine has to convince them, hey, you sent me from the future to warn you, and this is what we have to do. And he thinks it's completely ridiculous, obviously, and really has to just convince him, hey man, you got to do this with me. And he starts saying things that obviously only Professor X would know, and they take that leap of faith and trust him. So they're trying to, he's basically, we got to break out Magneto, and he's like, I know somebody that can do it. And that fast forwards, to one of the best parts of the movie, like what I thought was just really awesome, and that's Quicksilver, who they have Quicksilver being played by Evan Peters, who, it's funny, was in Kick-Ass 2, And also from Kick-Ass, we have I should say also in so there's obviously two people playing Quicksilver, besides
Is that Captain America over there? Quick,
besides Evan Peters in the X-Men, because it's Fox. There is also Anthony what's his name? Anthony Taylor Johnson plays Quicksilver in the Avengers, and also at the end of the credits in Captain America: Winter Soldier, we see him as Quicksilver. So it's kind of weird to have two people playing that character, but Evan Peters was great as Quicksilver. Like, he was very, he was hilarious, and he really just did a great job. The way that they show him breaking out Magneto is really cool. There's also that dynamic that, hey, this is my father, and he didn't even know that, which is weird, because like at the time during the movie, I'm like, man, that's his dad, and he's not even acknowledging it, and Magneto's not acknowledging it, and it's just so weird. Like, but they have like this weird bond where it's like they know but they don't know, and you're like, I wonder how that's going to play out, and it does play out later. So they break Magneto out, there's a fight, all that good stuff. Charles is just battling with what to do. They basically explain the situation. Hey, we need to find Mystique, Raven. She is going to kill Bolivar Trask, and it is going to be the end of the world, essentially. So they end up tracking her down in France and prevent her from killing Trask. But, at that point, Magneto kind of turns on them. He decides, hey, I love Mystique, I love Raven and everything, but she needs to die. Like, there can be no possibility that they ever capture her or take her DNA or any of that stuff. And that's when, Professor X freaks, Beast freaks, and it doesn't end pretty. Everybody's after Magneto. It's pretty bad. So and the weirder part is they end up getting her DNA that way anyway. So essentially the whole thing that they're trying to prevent is Bolivar Trask, played brilliantly, by the way, by Peter Dinklage, from getting her DNA to eventually be able to recreate or blend it into the Sentinel DNA. And I'm not a Game of Thrones fan, so I really didn't know anything about Peter Dinklage. Fantastic in this movie. I mean, honestly, the acting is really pretty top-notch in this movie in general, but he was great as Bolivar Trask. I know I'm kind of like fast-forwarding through a lot of this. I mean, really, I just want to give you kind of an overview of the movie. They end up in D.C. Mystique is tracking down Magneto. You see the scene in the trailers where he rips up RFK Stadium in Washington, where the Redskins play, or where they used to play, or whatever, and dropping it around the White House. And that never made sense until you kind of watch the movie. You realize he's doing it to trap everybody in. And they're basically about to announce these Sentinels, which were all made without metal, so that they couldn't be impacted by the magnetism of Magneto. But he broke in and slipped metal into all of them so he could control them. And long story short, they end up retreating into a safe room bunker way below the ground, and that's when Trask's little mutant sniffer device starts going off, saying, "Oh my God, Mystique is in the room." Right when they're about to kind of track her down, Magneto rips this room from out of the ground, and Mystique projects herself as Richard Nixon. Magneto has all the cameras of the world on them, and Professor X is, they all ended up there. They all figured it out. He's trying to get through to Magneto, but Magneto has his helmet, so he can't. The long and short of it is, as Magneto is distracted by one of the Sentinels finally turning on him, barely distracted, just enough to basically take it apart and disassemble it. Mystique shoots one of the metalist bullet, guns at Magneto, and it ends up knocking his helmet off and wounds him, not obviously fatally. And Professor X is able to kind of take control and isolate him from the equation. And then he has to project himself and try to appeal to Mystique. He's like, look, you are the hero right now. All the eyes of the world are watching you. If you walk away, you are the hero, and we prove that mutants are better than this. And we end up fast forwarding to the future. Again, the Sentinels are coming down on everybody. We see Storm die. We see, everybody's dying again. Storm, Sunspot, Warpath, Bishop, Colossus, Blink. Literally everybody is being kind of ripped to pieces. Just getting destroyed. And we even see Magneto go out there and do his thing, the Ian McKellen version. And, he is mortally wounded. And finally the Sentinels break in, and Wolverine is awake at that point. Everybody is basically there, and these Sentinels are crashing in on them, and they're firing the kill shot, and we fade to black, basically. And, we realize that, even without, Wolverine's influence, because, as part of the attack on the White House, Magneto had basically put tons of rebar through Wolverine's body and thrown him into the Potomac River. We basically see that, Professor X, Charles Xavier, the younger version, James McAvoy version, has done it, like on his own. He appealed to Mystique, and whatever he caused, whatever he did, it ended up changing the future, and they didn't end up making these evolving Sentinels. Obviously, whatever happens still happens eventually, but those evolving Sentinels aren't able to hunt them down and kill them and create that future. I know I skipped a lot of stuff that happens in the movie, but I mean that's basically the gist of the story, and it is really a great story. And it's crazy because you're able to see all this death, and you're feeling hopeless, and then at the end, we go to Wolverine waking up at the mansion, and he's walking down the hall, and he's seeing all these people, and he's confused, and he's like, we see Anna Paquin as Rogue, who we didn't see nearly enough in this movie, and we see Iceman, Bobby, I think he's talking to her, Rogue. We see Kitty Pryde. We see, everybody is as they should be, and then all of a sudden, Wolverine fixes his eyes on Jean Grey. The classic Jean Grey from the other movies, who was played by just a hot redhead. I can't think of her name. Famke Janssen. She, that girl is just so hot. I'm not really like one to get all excited about celebrities and stuff, but I don't know, man. I've got a bit of a celebrity crush on that chick. And then you see Scott Summers Cyclops pops out, and all is as it was, and in one fell swoop, they're able to kind of correct everything almost that people were upset about with X-Men 3. And, everybody kind of leaves the room, and, Wolverine is, who of course is played by Hugh Jackman brilliantly. He's kind of there with Professor X, and Professor X is like, "What's wrong, Logan?" And he just kind of looks at him. He doesn't know what to do, and he's like, "It worked. The last thing I remember was it was 1973. And then you just kind of see Professor X deadpan it, and he's like, well, we have a lot of catching up to do, don't we? So, it's crazy because at that point Wolverine has no idea what's happened since 1973, and I don't know if it's 2023 at that point because I don't feel like it is. I guess I don't know why it wouldn't be, but you would think a lot of these guys would be a little bit older at that point. Especially Kitty Pryde and Bobby, Iceman. You would think all that, but so yeah, I don't know what happens there, but essentially they saved the day and they created a new future, and it was a great story. I really liked the story. Very, very dramatic. I really and truly liked it. It's hard after seeing Captain America, Winter Soldier, and even Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2. I really felt like both of those were a little bit better, personally. And I'm not really the biggest of Spider-Man fans. Definitely enjoyed Captain America the most of the group. I definitely prefer everything that the Avengers side is doing over what the Fox side is doing, especially Fantastic Four. I hate the new Fantastic Four Fox movie. But this is a really good movie. Don't be scared off by 7 out of 10. That's a good score. I think if you haven't seen it yet, you're really going to enjoy it. There's a lot of really great scenes throughout the movie. Definitely stay after the credits. There's a huge scene after the credits where you kind of rewind to ancient Egypt. We see this blue-skinned, skinny, boyish man, lifting pyramids and putting them in place. And you kind of fade to him. You can hear everybody chanting En Sabah Nur, which means the first one. And we see, the 4 horsemen, or 4 people in black, robes on horse, which essentially is the 4 horsemen, standing behind Apocalypse. And it's obviously showing off, the future, or what our next movie is essentially going to be, which is, obviously X-Men Age of Apocalypse. So yeah, man, really stoked for that. Definitely a lot of foreshadowing to that. So we don't even really know who's going to be in that. But I have no doubt that it's going to be epic. And I for one cannot wait for it. So it's definitely going to be. I don't know if they're actually calling it Age of Apocalypse, but it's cool to see them kind of foreshadow to it. So one of the great things about kind of rewriting history with this movie is you get to kind of use a lot of the classic characters that were killed off. Age of Apocalypse, I believe, happens before the Jean Grey saga. So she can be alive for it. I'm pretty sure she is alive for it. Obviously that'll all happen at some point, and they'll, whatever. But yeah, man, just really cool. I'm really looking forward to what they do with that. So as Fox goes, definitely a really great movie. Lots of really great jobs with the acting. I really enjoyed Evan Peters as Quicksilver, James McAvoy as Charles Xavier, Michael Fassbender as the young Magneto. They do really fantastic jobs. Peter Dinklage as Bolivar Trask, I really enjoyed. Just a really good movie. Bryan Singer did a good job. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. There's definitely things that the average X-Men fan is probably not going to love, but at the same time, they did a great job, and I'm just really looking forward to the next movie and bringing back, all the classic X-Men. Kelsey Grammer, we see him as Beast when we flash forward to the new future. Yeah, man, it's just a really awesome movie. You won't be disappointed. It does run a little long, but hey, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I definitely recommend that you see it. As comic book movies go, it was definitely a really good one, and you can't go wrong. So let me know what you guys think. I really enjoyed it. I really feel like This is a great recreation, or a great opportunity for X-Men to recreate itself. So that's it, guys. Let me know what you think, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm going to end it right at a half hour. We'll see ya.